The restaurant hummed with soft jazz and the low murmur of conversations. Candlelight flickered across white tablecloths, casting warm shadows on faces filled with laughter and anticipation. It was the kind of place where first dates became anniversaries, where proposals were whispered over dessert, where people came to celebrate beginnings. Natalie Chun sat in the corner booth, her fingers drumming against the stem of her untouched wine glass. She checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Her best friend Miranda had set this up, promising her it would be fun, promising her she needed to get back out there after her divorce had finalized 6 months ago. Natalie had resisted at first, but Miranda had been insistent, almost suspiciously enthusiastic about this particular setup. The text from Miranda came through as she was considering leaving. He's on his way. Dark hair. Blue button-down. You'll know him when you see him. Promise this will be memorable. Something about the phrasing made Natalie's stomach twist slightly, but she pushed the feeling away. Miranda wouldn't actually set her up badly. They'd been friends since college. They'd been bridesmaids at each other's weddings. They'd cried together through breakups and celebrated promotions over champagne. Miranda knew what Natalie needed, or so she thought. The man who approached her table 15 minutes later moved with the kind of careful deliberation that suggested someone who'd learned to navigate the world quietly. He was tall but didn't use his height to command space. His dark hair was neatly combed but not styled. The blue button-down was clean and pressed but not expensive. His shoes were polished but worn at the heels. Everything about him suggested someone who took care with appearance not out of vanity but out of respect for others. His eyes found hers with a question rather than assumption. Natalie, she nodded, gesturing to the seat across from her. You must be Daniel. He extended his hand formally before sitting. His handshake was firm but brief, his palm slightly calloused. I apologize for being late. My daughter's babysitter was running behind. You have a daughter? Yes, Emma. She's 7. He said it simply, without the defensive edge some single parents carried, waiting for judgment. He stated it as fact, as context, as the most important detail about himself. Natalie felt her phone buzz in her lap. She glanced down discreetly. Miranda's text made her blood go cold. OMG, is he there yet? Jessica said he actually showed up. This is going to be hilarious. We're watching from the bar across the street. Can't wait to hear how this goes. A second text followed immediately. Did you see his shoes? Classic. Natalie's throat tightened. She looked up at Daniel, who was studying the menu with genuine concentration, his finger tracing down the appetizer list with the focus of someone calculating costs. She saw his eyes pause on prices, saw the slight tension in his jaw as he moved past certain items toward others. This was a joke. This entire evening was a joke. Miranda and her other friends had set this man up as entertainment, as a story to laugh about later over brunch. She felt sick. But Daniel looked up then, offering a small, slightly apologetic smile. I don't come to places like this often. Everything looks good. Do you have any recommendations? There was no embarrassment in his voice, no pretension, just honest curiosity and the vulnerability of someone trying to navigate an unfamiliar situation with grace. Natalie made a decision in that moment that would change everything. Actually, she said carefully, closing her menu, would you mind if we went somewhere else? I just realized I've been here too many times lately. I'd love to try something different, something more comfortable. Daniel's eyebrows raised slightly, and she saw relief flicker across his features before he caught it. I'd be fine with that. Did you have somewhere in mind? There's a diner about 3 blocks from here. Best burgers in the city, and their milkshakes are incredible. Much better conversation atmosphere too. Less. She waved her hand vaguely at the formal setting. Less like a job interview. His smile reached his eyes this time, transforming his careful expression into something genuine and warm. That sounds perfect. As they stood to leave, Natalie fired off a quick text to Miranda. Not feeling well. Leaving early. Don't wait up. She turned her phone off before Miranda could respond. The night air was cool against their faces as they stepped out onto the sidewalk. Natalie was acutely aware of Daniel's presence beside her. The way he naturally positioned himself between her and the street. The way he adjusted his pace to match hers without making it obvious. Small courtesies that felt instinctive rather than performed. "So how do you know Miranda?" Daniel asked as they walked. Natalie hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "We've been friends for a long time, though I'm realizing maybe not as well as I thought." She glanced at him sideways. "How about you? How did you end up on this blind date?" Daniel's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "My sister works with someone who knows Miranda. She's been trying to get me to date again since my wife passed away 3 years ago. I finally agreed just to get everyone to stop worrying about me." He paused. "I probably should have asked more questions about how this was set up." Natalie stopped walking. "Your wife passed away?" He nodded, his gaze steady but distant. "Cancer. It was quick, which I suppose was a mercy. But it left me with a 7-year-old daughter and a lot of medical debt I'm still working through." The casual cruelty of what Miranda had done crashed over Natalie like a wave. This wasn't just some random guy they decided to mock for their entertainment. This was a widower, a single father, someone who'd agreed to this date as an act of faith in human connection after devastating loss. If you've ever wondered how a single conversation can completely shift your understanding of someone, maybe you know what happened next. Drop a comment below if you've ever had that moment of sudden clarity where everything you thought you knew just changed. "I'm so sorry," Natalie said, and meant it in more ways than he could know. "That must have been incredibly difficult." It was. Daniel started walking again, and she fell into step beside him. "Still is, in different ways. Emma asks about her mother constantly. I try to keep her memory alive while also helping Emma move forward. It's a balance I'm still figuring out." "You sound like you're doing it thoughtfully." "I sound like I'm making it up as I go," he corrected gently, but there was self-awareness rather than self-pity in his tone. "But I'm trying. That's all I can do." The diner came into view, its neon sign casting pink and blue light across the sidewalk. Through the wide windows, Natalie could see families in booths, teenagers crowding around tables, an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie. Real life, messy and warm and genuine. They slid into a booth near the back, and Daniel visibly relaxed. This environment suited him better, she realized. The formal restaurant had made him careful and constrained. Here, his shoulders dropped slightly, his expression opened. "This is much better," he confirmed, echoing her thoughts. "Thank you for suggesting it." A waitress appeared with menus and water glasses, and they ordered burgers and milkshakes without ceremony. As they waited for their food, Natalie found herself genuinely curious about this man who'd been set up as a punchline. "What do you do for work?" she asked. "I'm a high school English teacher. 10th grade mostly. Some creative writing electives when enrollment supports it." He took a sip of water. "It's not lucrative, but it's stable, and the schedule works with Emma's school hours. Plus I genuinely love it. Getting teenagers to care about literature feels like winning small battles every day." "What are they reading right now?" "We just finished To Kill a Mockingbird. Next up is The Great Gatsby." His eyes lit up slightly. "I have this theory that Gatsby is actually about parenting and legacy, not just romantic obsession. The green light isn't just Daisy. It's the future he's trying to create. The world he's trying to will into existence through sheer determination and hope." Natalie leaned forward, intrigued. "That's not the standard interpretation." "No, but think about it. Gatsby constructs an entire identity, an entire life, oriented around this vision of what should be. He's trying to recreate the past, yes, but more than that, he's trying to build a future that matches his ideal. That's what parenting is. You're constantly building toward this vision of who you hope your child will become while trying to honor who they actually are." He caught himself laughing slightly. "Sorry, I get carried away with book analysis. Occupational hazard." "Don't apologize. That's genuinely interesting." And it was. Natalie had read Gatsby in high school and remembered only the parties and the car accident. Hearing Daniel talk about it as a meditation on hope and legacy made her want to read it again. Their food arrived, and they ate with easy conversation flowing between them. Daniel asked about her work as a graphic designer, and actually listened to her answers, asking follow-up questions that showed he was processing what she said rather than just waiting for his turn to talk. He wanted to see her portfolio, genuinely curious about the creative process. He laughed at her stories about difficult clients with the recognition of someone who dealt with difficult students. "So tell me about Emma," Natalie said eventually. "What's she like?" Daniel's entire expression softened. "She's fierce. That's the first word that comes to mind. She has her mother's determination and my tendency to overthink everything, which is either going to make her incredibly successful or drive her crazy. Probably both." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo of a small girl with dark braids and a gap-toothed grin, holding up a trophy. "That's from her soccer tournament last month. They came in third, but she was so proud. She's beautiful. She's everything." He said it simply, but Natalie heard the weight behind it. Emma wasn't just his daughter. She was his purpose, his motivation, the reason he got up every morning and pushed through grief and debt and exhaustion. It must be hard doing it alone. Some days more than others. My parents help when they can, but they're getting older. My sister does what she's able to, but she has her own family. Mostly it's just me and Emma figuring it out together. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "I'll be honest with you, Natalie. I probably shouldn't have agreed to this date. I'm not in a position to offer someone much right now. Between work and Emma and just trying to keep everything together, I don't have a lot of spare time or energy. It wouldn't be fair to start something when I can't give it proper attention." It was the most transparent thing anyone had said to her in months. No games, no posturing, just honest assessment of his own limitations. After years of her ex-husband's carefully constructed lies and eventual betrayal, Daniel's directness felt like cold water on a hot day. "I appreciate your honesty," she said carefully. "For what it's worth, I'm not in a great position to start something either. I'm 6 months out of a divorce that I should have initiated years earlier. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not constantly managing someone else's ego and insecurity." Daniel nodded with understanding. "Then maybe this is just two people having a good meal and a decent conversation with no expectations beyond that." "That sounds perfect." They finished their burgers in companionable silence, and when the check came, Daniel reached for it immediately. Natalie noticed the way his eyes tracked to the total, the slight calculation happening behind his expression, and she made another decision. "Split it?" she offered. "Since this is just two people having dinner with no expectations." The relief that crossed his face was subtle but unmistakable. "That would be fair." They paid and stepped back out into the night. The air had grown cooler, and Natalie pulled her jacket tighter. Daniel noticed immediately. "Can I walk you to your car? I took a rideshare. I was planning to have wine at that first restaurant. Let me wait with you until your ride comes, at least." They stood on the corner, watching traffic pass, and Natalie felt her phone buzzing insistently in her pocket. She knew it was Miranda, probably with increasingly frantic messages demanding details, wanting to know about the joke date, wanting to laugh about the widower teacher who'd shown up in worn shoes and a pressed shirt. The thought made her furious. "Daniel," she said suddenly, "I need to tell you something." He turned to face her, his expression open and patient. This date wasn't set up with good intentions. Miranda and her friends, they thought it would be funny. You were supposed to be entertainment for them. She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I found out right after you arrived. That's why I suggested we leave." She watched the understanding move across his features, not with shock but with a kind of weary recognition, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected about how the world treated people like him. "I see." His voice was quiet but not angry. "Thank you for telling me. And thank you for suggesting we leave. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that." "No, they don't." He was silent for a moment, looking down at his hands. "I wondered, actually, when my sister mentioned it, something felt off about how enthusiastic everyone was. But I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was projecting my own insecurity onto the situation." "You weren't paranoid. They're just cruel." Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. "I've known Miranda for 15 years, and I'm realizing I don't actually know her at all. Or maybe I do, and I just didn't want to see it. Her rideshare pulled up to the curb, but neither of them moved. Natalie, Daniel said carefully, for what it's worth, I'm glad we did this. Not the setup, obviously, but this tonight. The diner, the conversation, just being treated like a person rather than a charity case or a punchline. That was nice. It was nice for me too, and she meant it. Daniel, would it be okay if I gave you my number? Not for dating, just, I don't know. As someone who might understand what it's like to be rebuilding after everything falls apart. He smiled that genuine smile again. The one that transformed his careful features into something warm. I'd like that. They exchanged numbers and Natalie climbed into the car. As it pulled away, she looked back to see Daniel still standing on the corner, hands in his pockets, watching to make sure she got away safely. That night, lying in bed, Natalie composed a text to Miranda. She wrote and deleted it 3 times before finally settling on something that felt true. What you did tonight was cruel and beneath the person I thought you were. I don't think we should talk for a while. I need to figure out what kind of friend I want to be, and it's not the kind who treats people as jokes. She sent it and immediately blocked Miranda's number before the response could come. Then she opened a new message to Daniel. Thank you for being so gracious tonight, even after you found out the truth. You deserved so much better than how you were treated. I hope Emma knows how lucky she is to have you as a father. His response came 20 minutes later. Emma tells me regularly that I'm embarrassing and that I make terrible jokes, but I think deep down she knows. Thank you for tonight, Natalie. It reminded me that there are still good people in the world. If you felt something shift in this story, if you've ever seen past someone's surface to who they really are underneath, hit that like button. Sometimes the people we're supposed to laugh at end up teaching us the most about grace. 3 weeks passed before Natalie and Daniel spoke again. Natalie spent that time going through what she privately called the Great Friendship Audit. She looked at her relationships with fresh eyes, asking herself hard questions about who she'd surrounded herself with and why. The answers weren't always comfortable. Miranda had been the ringleader, but others had participated. Jessica, who'd apparently volunteered to scout the restaurant. Lauren, who'd been in on the joke. How many other times had they done something like this? How many other people had been objects of their entertainment while Natalie looked the other way or, worse, participated without really thinking about the impact? She thought about her ex-husband, about how he'd isolated her from anyone who questioned him, how he'd cultivated friendships with people who enabled his behavior rather than challenged it. She'd thought, after the divorce, that she'd reclaimed her authentic friendships. But maybe she'd just returned to a different kind of enabling dynamic, one where cruelty was dressed up as humor and exclusion masqueraded as inside jokes. Her phone rang on a Tuesday evening while she was sketching logo concepts for a new client. Daniel's name appeared on the screen, and she felt an unexpected flutter of nervousness before answering. "Hi," she said, trying to sound casual. "Hi. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Just work stuff. Nothing urgent. What's up?" There was a pause, and she could almost hear him gathering courage. "Emma has a school thing on Friday, a creative writing showcase where students read their work aloud. She's been working on a piece for weeks, and she's terrified and excited in equal measure." Another pause. "I know this is a strange request, but would you want to come? She doesn't have a lot of people in the audience usually, just me and sometimes my parents if they're feeling up to it." I thought maybe a friendly face would help with her nerves. Natalie's immediate instinct was to say yes, but she forced herself to slow down and think about what he was really asking. This wasn't just an invitation to a school event. This was Daniel introducing her, however peripherally, to his daughter's life. This was him trusting her with something that mattered. "I would love to," she said carefully, "but I want to make sure Emma's comfortable with a stranger being there. Have you mentioned me to her?" "I told her I had a nice dinner with a new friend," Daniel said. She asked approximately 40,000 follow-up questions, as 7-year-olds do. She wanted to know if you were pretty, if you liked soccer, if you knew any good jokes, and if you'd be my girlfriend. I told her you were pretty and seemed nice, that I didn't know your stance on soccer or your joke quality, and that we were just friends. Natalie laughed despite herself. What did she say to that? She said, "Dad, that's what everyone says before they become girlfriend and boyfriend." Then she went back to playing Legos. "So I think she'd be fine with you being there." "More than fine, actually. She got excited when I said I might invite you." "Then yes, I'd be honored to come." They made plans for Friday evening, and Natalie spent the next 2 days fighting the urge to overthink what to wear to a middle school creative writing showcase. Eventually she settled on jeans and a nice sweater, casual enough to not seem like she was trying too hard, put together enough to show respect for the event. The school auditorium was smaller than she expected, with that distinctive smell of old textbooks and floor polish that all schools seem to share. Daniel was waiting in the lobby, and his face lit up when he saw her. "You made it." "Of course. Wouldn't miss it." He led her to seats in the third row, and Natalie noticed several other teachers nodding to him as they passed. He was respected here, she realized. Like the kind of teacher who stayed late to help students, who remembered details about their lives, who made literature matter. Emma was easy to spot when the students filed out onto the stage. She had Daniel's dark hair and serious expression, but her eyes were lighter, more gold than brown. She wore a purple dress that looked slightly too big, probably bought with growing room in mind, and her hands twisted together nervously as she scanned the audience. Her face broke into a huge smile when she spotted Daniel. Then her eyes moved to Natalie, and Natalie saw the question, the assessment, the quick calculation happening behind those gold eyes. Emma was sizing her up, trying to figure out who this stranger was and what she meant to her father. Natalie smiled and gave a small wave. Emma waved back tentatively. The showcase began, and Natalie found herself genuinely impressed by the quality of student work. They read poems about identity and family, short stories about magical realism and everyday struggles, personal essays about immigration and loss and hope. Daniel had taught them well. Their writing was honest and sophisticated without being pretentious. When Emma's turn came, she walked to the microphone with visible nervousness, her paper shaking slightly in her hands. Daniel leaned forward in his seat, his entire body tense with supportive energy. Emma cleared her throat and began to read in a voice that started soft but grew stronger as she continued. "My mom is made of photographs now. She lives in frames on our walls and in the album under my dad's bed that he looks at when he thinks I'm asleep. She's in the stories Dad tells me about when they met and when I was born and all the times in between. Sometimes I worry I'm forgetting her real voice. I have videos, but they're not the same as remembering. Dad says that's okay, that memory is different than remembering, that she's part of me in ways I won't understand until I'm older. I used to be angry that she left. Dad explained that she didn't want to leave, that sometimes bodies stop working even when hearts still have more love to give. I didn't understand that for a long time. I thought if she loved me enough, she would have tried harder to stay. Now I'm starting to understand something different. Love isn't about staying when you can't. Love is about what you leave behind. Mom left me Dad, who never stops trying even when he's tired. She left me her stubbornness, which Dad says I definitely inherited. She left me her love of reading and thunderstorms and the way she always saw the best in people. So maybe Mom isn't just in photographs. Maybe she's in who I'm becoming. Maybe that's what it means when someone you love dies. They stop being a person you can touch and they become a person you carry. I'm learning to be okay with that. Some days are harder than others. But Dad is teaching me that it's okay to miss someone and still be happy. That grief and joy can exist in the same heart. Mom would want me to be happy, so I'm trying. And Dad is trying. And we're figuring it out together. The auditorium was silent when she finished. Then applause erupted, genuine and moved. Natalie glanced at Daniel and saw tears streaming down his face, his hand pressed against his mouth. He was shaking slightly, overwhelmed by his daughter's words, by her understanding, by the evidence that she was processing their loss in healthy, articulate ways. Natalie reached over and squeezed his hand briefly. He squeezed back, grateful for the anchor. After the showcase, parents and students mingled in the lobby over cookies and punch. Emma ran up to Daniel, and he swept her into a huge hug, lifting her off the ground. "You were incredible," he said into her hair. "I'm so proud of you." Did you cry, Dad? Madison's mom said she saw you crying. Absolutely, I cried. Your piece was beautiful and honest and brave. Of course I cried. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. Then she turned to Natalie with that same assessing look from earlier. You're Natalie. I am. You're Emma. Your writing was really powerful. Thank you. Emma studied her for a moment longer. Do you like soccer? I've never played, but I like watching. Do you know any good jokes? Natalie pretended to think hard. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Emma's eyes lit up with anticipation. Why? Because he was outstanding in his field. Emma groaned dramatically. That's terrible, Dad. She tells jokes as bad as yours. Daniel laughed. I think that might have been a test you just passed. They spent another 20 minutes at the school, with Emma introducing Natalie to her friends and her teacher, pulling her around the art displays in the hallway, chattering about everything and nothing with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of childhood. Daniel watched with an expression Natalie couldn't quite read, something between hope and caution. Eventually they walked to the parking lot together, Emma between them, holding both their hands. Are you coming to my soccer game on Saturday? Emma asked Natalie suddenly. Emma, Daniel said gently. Natalie might have other plans. Do you? Emma asked bluntly. Natalie looked down at this fierce, articulate, grieving, joyful child who'd already experienced more loss than most adults. I don't, actually. I'd love to come if it's okay with your dad. Emma looked up at Daniel expectantly. He met Natalie's eyes over his daughter's head, asking a silent question. Natalie nodded slightly. Yes, she was sure. Yes, she understood what she was agreeing to. Yes, she wanted this. Then I guess Natalie's coming to your soccer game, Daniel said. Emma cheered and launched into a detailed explanation of her team's strategy and her position and who her main rivals were. Natalie listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making Emma feel heard and important. When they reached Natalie's car, Emma surprised her by wrapping her arms around Natalie's waist in a quick, fierce hug. Thank you for coming to my showcase. It was nice having more people there. Thank you for letting me be there. Your writing really touched me. Emma released her and skipped back to Daniel, who scooped her up and carried her toward their car despite her protests that she was too old to be carried. Natalie sat in her car for a few minutes after they drove away, processing what had just happened. She'd gone from a cruel joke date to attending a school showcase to being invited to a children's soccer game in less than a month. Her life had taken a turn she never anticipated. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant a lot to both of us. Emma talked about you the entire drive home. Fair warning, you've been officially adopted by a 7-year-old. Natalie smiled and texted back. I'm honored. See you Saturday. That night, for the first time in months, Natalie felt like she was moving toward something rather than away from something. Not away from her failed marriage, not away from toxic friendships, but toward something new and genuine and possibly wonderful. She thought about Emma's essay, about grief and joy existing in the same heart, about being the person someone carries rather than the person they can touch. It made her think about her own life differently, about what she wanted to leave behind, about what kind of person she wanted to be. Saturday arrived with perfect soccer weather, cool but sunny, with just enough breeze to keep everyone comfortable. Natalie showed up with coffee for Daniel and a poster board she'd stayed up late making that said, "Go Emma," in glittery letters. It was ridiculous and over the top and exactly the kind of thing she remembered loving as a kid when her parents came to her events. Daniel laughed when he saw it. She's going to love that. Emma did love it. She ran over before the game started, her eyes huge. Is that for me? All for you. I figured you needed proper cheering support. Can you hold it up during the game? Absolutely. The game itself was chaotic in the way children's sports always are, with kids running in clusters after the ball, occasionally remembering their positions, more concerned with showing off for their parents than with actual strategy. Emma was clearly one of the better players, focused and determined, following the ball with single-minded intensity. Natalie cheered herself hoarse, holding up the glittery sign, celebrating every time Emma touched the ball. Daniel stood beside her, equally enthusiastic, occasionally yelling gentle coaching advice that Emma completely ignored. Emma's team won 3-2, with Emma scoring one of the goals. The celebration afterward was pure joy, with the team piling on top of each other and parents taking pictures and everyone riding the high of victory. "Can Natalie come to lunch with us?" Emma asked Daniel, still breathless from the game. Daniel looked at Natalie. "We usually do pizza after games. Very casual, very loud, with a bunch of 8-year-olds running around. You're absolutely welcome to join, but I'll understand if you'd rather preserve your hearing and sanity." "I love pizza and controlled chaos," Natalie said. "I'm in." The pizza place was exactly as advertised, packed with families and sports teams, the noise level just below painful. They squeezed into a booth, Emma still wearing her muddy uniform, recounting every moment of the game in exhaustive detail. Halfway through lunch, one of Emma's teammates ran over to their table. "Emma, come play air hockey with us." Emma looked at Daniel for permission. He nodded, and she scrambled out of the booth, pausing to look back at Natalie. "Are you going to be here when I get back?" "I'm not going anywhere." Emma smiled and ran off to join her friends. Alone with Daniel for the first time that afternoon, Natalie suddenly felt nervous. They'd been building toward something, circling around it without naming it, and now in the noisy aftermath of a children's soccer game, it felt like maybe it was time to be honest. If you've ever found yourself on the edge of something new and terrifying and maybe wonderful, you know this feeling. If you've been there or you're there now, hit subscribe. These stories are for anyone who believes in second chances and unexpected connections. "This is happening kind of fast," Daniel said carefully, echoing her thoughts. "And I want to be very clear about something. Emma is my priority. Always. She comes first in every decision I make. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, you need to know that going in. I would never want it any other way," Natalie said. "Emma should come first. She's incredible, Daniel. You're doing an amazing job with her. I'm doing my best. Some days I'm convinced I'm screwing it all up, that she's going to need so much therapy as an adult because I didn't handle her mother's death correctly, or I said the wrong thing, or I wasn't enough to fill the void." He rubbed his hand over his face. "Being a single parent is constantly second-guessing every choice. You know what I noticed today? Emma is joyful. She's processing grief in this incredibly healthy way. She's confident. She's kind to her teammates. She's curious about the world. You're not screwing it up, Daniel. Whatever you're doing, it's working." He looked at her with something like wonder. "How did we get here? For weeks ago, I showed up to a date that was supposed to be a joke. And now you're at my daughter's soccer game telling me I'm doing okay as a parent. How did this happen? I think you showed up as yourself, and I decided I wanted to know who that person was." Natalie reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Full disclosure, I'm terrified. I'm 6 months out of a divorce from someone who made me question my judgment constantly. I'm still learning to trust my own instincts again. But my instincts say that you and Emma are good people, and that being around you makes me want to be a better person. My instincts say the same thing about you," Daniel admitted. "But I'm also terrified. I haven't let anyone into Emma's life like this since her mother died. What if we try this and it doesn't work out? What if Emma gets attached and then I have to explain another loss? I don't know if I can do that to her." "Then we're both terrified," Natalie said. "So maybe we take it slow. Maybe we don't make any big declarations or promises. Maybe we just see where this goes, honestly and carefully, with Emma's well-being as the priority." Daniel turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "I can do slow and careful. I'm good at overthinking things." "What a coincidence. So am I." Emma returned then, breathless and victorious from air hockey, and climbed back into the booth. She noticed their hands immediately, her eyes going wide. "Are you girlfriend and boyfriend now?" Daniel and Natalie looked at each other, both fighting smiles. "We're taking things slowly," Daniel said. "Getting to know each other better. Is that okay with you?" Emma considered this seriously. "Will you still come to my stuff?" "If you want me there, absolutely," Natalie promised. "Then it's okay." Emma took a huge bite of pizza, already moving on to the next topic. "Dad, can I have a sleepover for my birthday?" Madison's having one and it looks really fun. Daniel groaned. We'll discuss it later. The rest of lunch passed in easy conversation, and when they finally left, Emma hugged Natalie goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world. Text me when you get home? Daniel asked as they walked to their cars. Absolutely. Natalie drove home with the glittery poster board in her back seat and the feeling that her life had just fundamentally shifted. She'd gone looking for nothing in particular and found a grieving widower and his fierce daughter, found purpose and connection in the last place she expected. Over the next several months, Natalie became a regular fixture in Daniel and Emma's life. She attended soccer games and school concerts, helped with homework, learned to braid hair when Emma decided she wanted a fancy hairstyle for picture day. She and Daniel went on actual dates when Emma stayed with Daniel's parents, discovering shared interests in old movies and terrible puns and long conversations about nothing in particular. It wasn't always easy. Emma had moments of grief where she asked hard questions about her mother and whether Natalie was trying to replace her. Daniel had moments of guilt, feeling like he was betraying his late wife's memory by moving forward. Natalie had moments of doubt, wondering if she was equipped to help raise someone else's child when she'd never wanted children of her own before. But they talked through it. All of it. The hard conversations, the awkward moments, the fears and doubts and grief that didn't disappear just because new joy appeared. They learned each other's boundaries and triggers, learned when to push and when to give space, learned that love wasn't about perfect compatibility, but about choosing each other daily despite difficulties. Natalie never heard from Miranda again after that initial text. She'd rebuilt her social circle carefully, finding friends who valued kindness over cleverness, who understood that humor shouldn't come at someone else's expense. She'd apologized to Daniel at least a dozen times for how they met, but he always stopped her. If that hadn't happened exactly that way, we might never have met at all, he'd say. I'm not grateful for the cruelty, but I'm grateful for where it led. Emma turned 8, then 9. She stopped asking if Natalie was going to be her stepmom and started asking when. Daniel and Natalie had those conversations privately, seriously, making sure they were both ready for that level of commitment. On a Saturday evening 2 years after that initial joke date, Daniel made dinner at home while Emma was at a friend's house. He'd gone all out, making Natalie's favorite pasta dish, setting the table with candles, putting on soft music. This feels familiar, Natalie said as she sat down. Are we recreating our first date? Actually, I'm doing the opposite of our first date. Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand. That night, I told you I wasn't in a position to offer someone much, that I didn't have time or energy for a relationship. I was honest about my limitations. I remember. I want to be honest now too. About the opposite. He took a deep breath. You've become essential to my life, to Emma's life. You've integrated yourself into our family so seamlessly that I can't imagine our future without you in it. You've been patient with my grief, generous with Emma, kind in ways I didn't know I needed. You make me want to be brave again, to believe in new beginnings. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Natalie's breath caught. I talked to Emma about this first, Daniel continued, because any decision I make has to consider what's best for her. She said, and I quote, "Duh, Dad. Obviously you should marry her. She already comes to all my stuff and helps with my homework and makes you happy. You're basically already married, you just need to make it official." End quote. Natalie laughed through sudden tears. So I'm asking officially. Daniel opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Natalie-chan, will you marry me? Will you let me and Emma love you for the rest of our lives? Will you be patient with us when we're difficult and celebrate with us when we're joyful and build the strange, beautiful family we've created? Yes, Natalie said without hesitation. To all of it. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and came around the table to kiss her. And Natalie thought about Emma's essay from 2 years ago, about how love doesn't mean staying when you can't, but about what you leave behind. Miranda had inadvertently left behind something good when she'd set up that cruel joke. She'd connected two people who needed each other, who would build something genuine and lasting from intentionally shaky ground. Sometimes the worst intentions lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes the people who set you up to fail accidentally set you up for the thing you needed most. And sometimes the single dad you were supposed to laugh at becomes the person you choose to build your life around, one soccer game and terrible joke and honest conversation at a time. Daniel pulled back, grinning. Emma made me promise to take pictures. She wants to show everyone at school that she was right about us becoming girlfriend and boyfriend. She's going to be insufferable about being right. Absolutely insufferable. She takes after her mother that way. He said it easily now, able to reference his late wife without the conversation becoming heavy. Sarah would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could match my overthinking with actual action. Someone who wouldn't let me get stuck in my own head. I wish I could have known her. I think you do know her in a way. You know Emma, and Emma is the best of both of us. Daniel pulled Natalie back to the table. Now we have to figure out how to tell everyone else. My parents are going to cry. My sister is going to say, finally. Emma's going to tell everyone we're getting married before we even leave this house. What about your colleagues? They already have a betting pool on when I was going to propose. Pretty sure Henderson in the science department just won $50. They spent the rest of the evening planning and dreaming, talking about timelines and guest lists and whether Emma should be a junior bridesmaid or just bridesmaid. Full stop. They called Daniel's parents, who did indeed cry. They FaceTimed Emma at her friend's house, who screamed so loud that her friend's parents came running to make sure everyone was okay. Late that night, lying in bed beside Daniel, Natalie thought about the path that had led her here, the failed marriage that had forced her to rebuild her sense of self, the toxic friendships that had shown her what she didn't want to be, the joke date that had introduced her to the man sleeping beside her and the fierce, brilliant daughter who'd adopted her. None of it had been easy. All of it had been necessary. She thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, sitting in that expensive restaurant waiting for a date she didn't really want, surrounded by friends who didn't really value her. That woman had been lost, uncertain, shaped by others' expectations rather than her own desires. The woman she was now knew what she wanted, knew what she valued, had learned that true connection came from honesty and vulnerability, not performance and pretense. She fell asleep grateful for cruel jokes that backfired, for worn shoes and pressed shirts, for men who loved their daughters fiercely and women who wrote essays about grief and joy existing in the same heart. She fell asleep grateful for the unexpected life she'd built from wreckage and intention, from endings and beginnings, from being willing to see past surfaces to the substance beneath. And in the morning, when Emma burst through the bedroom door at 6 a.m., demanding to see the ring again and announcing that she'd already started planning the wedding, Natalie laughed and pulled the excited girl into bed between them, thinking that this, right here, was exactly what happiness looked like. Imperfect, chaotic, unexpected, and absolutely perfectly right.